Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next SAE event here in January of 2020. We've got a really exciting event today. We've got two individuals from the Iowa Corn Promotion Board. My name is John Messina. I'm a board member here at SAE Chicago section. So we welcome everybody from the Chicago section and our visitors from other sections. Thank you for coming. Tonight's event came out of another event that we had. We had a company on Clear Flame Technologies. They presented an alternative to diesel engines that was based on ethanol for those applications, things like off-highway equipment and so forth that aren't easily electrified. That event was very well received by our section. We had a lot of people very interested in the topic after that. So what we decided to do was have a follow-on event to that where we invited a couple of individuals who are experts in the area of ethanol. To kind of take us a step deeper into the technology because it is of great interest to the folks in the Chicago section and many engineers in the surrounding sections. So I'm going to go ahead and start walking you through just a little bit, tell you a little bit about our Chicago section today, and then we'll jump right into our presentation. We're going to open up with a poll, okay? So everybody knows Iowa is the corn producing state. But I'm going to launch a poll to see who might know what the next biggest corn production state is in our country. So that you'll see the poll pop up on your screen here. I'm going to let everybody vote for a couple of minutes, but let me know if you think it's Illinois, Nebraska, Texas, Minnesota, or Alaska. We'll give it about 15 more seconds, and then we'll share the results here.
Forget every time I do this because I'm a co-host, I don't get to vote. I'm always so excited.
Oh, I apologize to the co-hosts. Yeah, if I made you a co-host, you're unable to vote. In this case, I don't think your vote would have mattered, Mike, the way I see the results coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here, and I'm going to share those results. I hope everybody can see that. It doesn't always come through, but yes, 81% of the people said Illinois, 16% said Nebraska. And I'm glad nobody said Alaska because we'd question your membership in SAE if you did. But yeah, so I know we think of Iowa and ethanol being important in Iowa, but it's also very important to our own home state here in Illinois. We are a very large corn producing state as well. So I think this topic is also of interest to our local economy, and Kelly and them will talk about that a little more, you know, the economics of ethanol. So I'm going to go ahead and continue through the presentation here. So just to tell you a little bit about our section, we are one of the largest sections of SAE. Of course, the Detroit area is I believe, larger than us, but we have over 1,000 members, close to 1,000 professional members, and then the student members vary by year. But right now we have about 140 active registered student members. We also have many other students who participate in our design programs who perhaps aren't actually officially members. So it is a very large section. You could see some of the benefits there: networking, presentations like this, opportunities to volunteer, professional development. So if you would like to learn more about SAE or get involved, I'll show you some contact information later on, but we'd love to have more support. We do need additional members to help out our board and ideas on future events like this. Sorry. Here's our current roster of board members. Our board chair is Tim Hicks, and I apologize, his last name got truncated off here. He is our board chair. Joining me tonight is Mike Bailing, who's our vice chair as well. He'll be helping to coordinate this event. I am our company ambassador chair, as well as I host many of our virtual online events. So what we'd like everybody to do, if you like events like this, you know, please go ahead and follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter. That'll help you keep up to date on future events. Okay, you could check out our website as well. We post all of our events on our website. We do have a board meeting every month, the second Tuesday of each month. If you're interested in getting more involved, please send an email to the ms013 email at email.sae.org. If you'd like to drop into one of our board meetings to inquire about getting more involved with our section. We'd love to have you. Okay, so we're going to go right into the good stuff and why everybody showed up tonight. We have two individuals from the Iowa Corn Promotion Board. I won't read their complete bios. You could see them there, but Kelly Nieuwenhuis has been farming for 38 years. His farms include 2,800 acres of row crops that he farms with his two brothers. He's been involved in ethanol really from, I would say, the beginning of its uses in the automotive industry. He's been instrumental in ethanol becoming a fuel of choice here in the United States in automotive vehicles. So we're very excited to have Kelly on. His counterpart here, Grant Menke, serves as the Director of Market Development for the Iowa Corn Bureau, and we're excited to have Grant on as well. We're going to be turning this over to them to talk a little bit more about presentations. Now, Grant is from a small town in Iowa called Ankeny, and I'm guessing not too many people have heard of it, but we're going to do another little poll here about his hometown, and I'm going to be interested to see if even Grant knows the answer to this. So the question is, I apologize, what Tokyo Olympic medalist is from Speaker Grant Menke's hometown of Ankeny, Iowa? Is it swimmer Jay Litherland, triathlete Noel Manuel, Sydney McLaughlin, who ran the 400 hurdles in Tokyo, or Justin Fongsavon, the F-54 para-javelin bronze medalist from Tokyo? Go ahead and get your votes in now, and we'll see who's right. It's looking like a very mixed field here. No clear leaders right now. We're going to give it another about 15, 20 seconds for everybody to get their votes in. Okay, the vote count is beginning to slow down. I'm going to give it another few seconds here. Get your votes in. Don't Google it, please. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end the poll. And before I share the results, Grant, what do you think? I'm going to let you go ahead since you're a co-host and not able to vote. What's your guess?
Is it Jay?
It is not Jay. I'm going to share the results. It is Justin Fongsavon, and about a third of the people got that correctly. Justin is a Paralympic athlete from Ankeny, Iowa, who participated in Tokyo, brought home a bronze medal, also holds the world record in javelin, right there from your own little hometown. Okay.
Well, I think my credibility as an expert has already gone out the window. So
no, I think you know more about corn than you do about the Tokyo
javelin.
Olympics.
Okay.
The javelin. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Grant.
All right. Let's see if I can successfully share my screen here. We got through this once successfully. All right. All right. Can everyone see that?
We can.
Well,
Looks good, Grant.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity for us to present tonight. And I want to especially thank SAE Chicago for this opportunity. And it's very kind of you after hearing from Kelly last year to put us back on your program again tonight. And we are very, very much looking forward to the conversation. So just so you know, I serve as the Director of Market Development for Iowa Corn, and trying to make more corn disappear is what we try to do through biofuels, through exports, through new uses, and of course through livestock feed, which is still our #1 demand for corn. So Iowa Corn, just introduction of the organization, is one of the most effective, longest standing agricultural organizations in the country. And Iowa corn farmers have benefited tremendously from having two extremely effective farmer-driven organizations, the Iowa Corn Growers Association and the Iowa Corn Promotion Board, who collectively work together with the joint mission of creating opportunities for long-term Iowa corn grower profitability. While Iowa Corn Growers Association works to implement and advocate for pro-corn public policy, the Iowa Corn Promotion Board invests in research for new uses of corn educating consumers about corn, and developing new markets for corn in all forms. And the partnership that exists between the Iowa Corn Growers Association and the Iowa Corn Promotion Board allows our state's corn farmers to continue to feed and fuel the world effectively. So it is my honor to be on a panel tonight with Kelly Nieuwenhuis, who is the president of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board. And Kelly's passion and expertise on ethanol is unmatched. So with that, Kelly, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, thanks a lot, Grant, and thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We really appreciate this opportunity to share some information about the biofuels and ethanol and Iowa corn. Like my bio said, I do farm with two brothers. So we have a family farm here in Northwest Iowa in O'Brien County. We basically ship 100% of our corn to ethanol plants here in Northwest Iowa. Besides being president of the Iowa Corn Promotion Board this year, I am a director at Siouxland Energy, an ethanol plant in Northwest Iowa, a 70 million gallon plant. I was president of Siouxland Energy from 2018 through 2020. I also sit on the National Corn Growers Ethanol Committee as their vice chair. I'm involved in the U.S. Grains Council on their ethanol committee. And, you know, there's a lot of excitement going on in the international trade for biofuels right now. The Iowa has what we call the Renewable Fuels Infrastructure Board. I am a member of that, and that's a grant program to help retailers in the state of Iowa put in infrastructure to sell higher blends of ethanol. So definitely have been involved in the ethanol industry for quite a while as a shareholder of an ethanol plant and are in several committees and boards. I like to tell the story. I actually used ethanol for the first time in 1978 as a senior in high school in my 1972 Chevelle that I still have today. Back then it was called Gasohol. And a little history there, Iowa Corn found about 6 retail locations in the state of Iowa to splash blend the first ethanol in the United States in our fuel system. And I was fortunate to be living in one of those small towns. And when I filled my Chevelle up, I could tell within a few miles that it had more power. So I've been a believer since 1978 in the ethanol industry. The background we show right now is Siouxland Energy Cooperative. It was the first dry mill ethanol plant in Iowa. It's a farmer-owned, farmer investors, and I was one of the original investors in this plant. Back in 2002, we were producing about 2.5 gallons per bushel. And today we're a fraction over 3 gallons per bushel. So that just kind of shows some of the efficiencies and improvements we've done. Plus our distillers grain that we feed to livestock. Our plant ships out all wet distillers because we got a large cattle industry in Northwest Iowa. So that's pretty beneficial for us. As you can see, it's a 70 million gallon plant, and we grind about 23 to 24 million bushels of corn annually. I'm looking at that picture. I just want to mention where that white tank is, that small propane tank. Currently, we're putting in a cogeneration system right there, which is a very large turbine that runs our natural gas. And that's going to produce 100% of our electricity for that plant, and plus the steam for our boilers. And we're doing all this on only 20% more natural gas. So this is greatly benefiting our CI score or carbon index scores. And that's been a big focus to Siouxland Energy. So I'll pass it back to Grant now.
All right. So as you can see here, I have up there a diagram of the dry mill ethanol process. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I think we've got other more interesting things to talk about. But on there, you can see the path that a corn kernel takes from going to being harvested in the field to trucked to an ethanol plant to processed into ethanol, animal feed, corn oil, and carbon dioxide. So as you can see over there, on average, 1 bushel of corn produces 2.9 gallons of ethanol, about between 15 and 16 pounds of animal feed, the distiller's grains product, 0.8 pounds of corn distiller's oil, which is largely used as a feedstock for the biodiesel and renewable diesel industry, and then just over a pound of captured biogenic carbon dioxide, which is used in the dry ice, bottling, food processing, and other uses. And we are going to discuss another use for carbon dioxide here shortly as well. So when it comes to ethanol production, as you can see, the ethanol industry has come a long way over the past 40 years, and the vast majority of that growth has occurred in the past 20 years. When Kelly's plant started up in 2002, the U.S. ethanol production industry was right about 2 billion gallons per year. And in 2021, ethanol production in the United States was just over 15 billion gallons. And 90% of the gasoline sold today contains at least 10% ethanol. And that 15 billion gallons creates a lot of jobs, generates a lot of household income, and boosts gross domestic product across the country. And to produce a lot of ethanol, you've got to grow a lot of corn. And U.S. corn farmers certainly did that once again in 2021. As you can see, the corn production report just came out yesterday, and U.S. corn production was at 15.1 billion bushels, the second highest ever. The average yield across the nation was 177 bushels per acre. That was the all-time record. Iowa's yield was an all-time record as well, 205 bushels per acre average. And when we talk about using a lot of corn for ethanol, a lot of people sometimes ask the question, well, if you're taking corn, using it for ethanol, I mean, isn't that taking it away from other uses? And so this last bullet point here, which shows that after every source of demand for U.S. corn was exhausted, for food, for feed, for fiber, for fat, for exports, for industrial uses, and for fuel, we still have 1.54 billion bushels of corn that are looking for a home. So anytime someone ever says to you, oh, why are we using all this corn for ethanol? We're taking it away from other uses. I give you this statistic. There's plenty of corn to go around for all of those uses. So let's move on to the benefits of ethanol, and they are many, but let's start with the fact that ethanol is a high octane, low carbon fuel. So the question you might ask is, what is octane? And you all probably know what octane is. It is the ability of a fuel to resist pre-ignition or knock. And ethanol has a tremendous ability to resist knock or pre-ignition. As you can see on this chart, ethanol has one of the highest octane ratings of any source out there. And it also does not cause cancer, contain toxic chemicals. And so it is not only the one of the highest octane sources out there, but is also the cleanest and the lowest cost source of fuel octane on the planet. This is a chart that illustrates ethanol's price advantage compared to other sources of fossil-based octane. And as you can see, ethanol has almost always been the lowest cost source of octane over the past 8 years. Kelly, on to you.
Thanks, Grant. just in the past year, there was a new Harvard study released that showed that the ethanol fuels reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 46%. It keeps improving over the time because of improved farming practices and improved ethanol production practices. Another thing that the Harvard study showed was land use change at only 4 megajoules. And that's kind of complicated, but if you look at California's Air Resources Board, they have land use change at 19 megajoules. And that's very outdated information. The GREET model shows it at 8 megajoules. So all this working together with farmers, improving farming practices, and ethanol plants becoming more and more efficient as time goes by, we keep reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And like I talked to you earlier about our plant focusing on lowering our CI scores and putting in that cogeneration system. That cogeneration system for our plant will lower our carbon index score by 10 to 12 points, which is really a huge move for the low carbon fuel standards in California. And I did forget to mention earlier that our plant ships 100% of our ethanol to California because we do qualify for their low carbon fuel standards. But just looking at this chart here, it shows how, with farming practices changing and precision fertilizer placement, like our plant, only wet distillers. There's a lot of plants that dry it because distillers are used in aquaculture, poultry, pork, and beef. So it's got a large range of feed source for high protein feed. This -30 on the soil organic carbon, that's an example of how farmers are improving their farming practices with less tillage, cover crops, and just all the different things we're doing that's different than 20, 30 years ago is improving our soil carbon holding capacity. And then that -30 that says CCUS, basically what that is, that's something that's in the works today. It's carbon capture and storage. And what that entails is capturing the CO2 emissions from the ethanol plants, which is mostly generated from the yeast during the fermentation stages at the ethanol plants, and sequestering it underground. And that would lower, the CI scores from 25 to 30 points, which makes us feel pretty confident that we have a possibility or a goal of reaching a 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions with ethanol. And then that would make us a carbon negative fuel supply. So we're pretty excited about the potentials there. Okay, I'll move on. One of the more benefits of the ethanol industry are the air quality. As Grant showed you earlier on the octane sources, the oil industry mostly uses benzene, toluene, and xylene for aromatics. Benzene is a known carcinogen. The other two are still being studied, but we know they're toxic to the environment. And so for air quality, our hope is to replace those toxic aromatics with ethanol. And here's a great example. The American Lung Association is a huge supporter of the ethanol industry because they've done studies that they did a study in 7 Midwest states a few years ago. And they said just running a 10% blend of ethanol reduced lung cancer rates by 20 to 30%. So that's pretty massive in the health side of things. And the Hormel Institute is doing studies on the particulate matters of what we're getting from the oil industry today with their aromatics, and showing the toxicity of those and how using ethanol would be a great improvement over those products. So there's a lot of positives with the ethanol industry for health effects and cleaner air. So I will pass it back here to, here's another perfect example of our cost. This is pretty common at our pumps in around the country where ethanol is offered. As you can see, there's a lot of savings to consumers by using ethanol blends.
So we could go on and on about the benefits of ethanol. It's higher carbon, higher octane, lower carbon. It's better for the air. It's better for your wallet. It's better for the economy. And it has literally been a renaissance for many rural communities. It's better for energy security as a domestically produced homegrown fuel, and it's better for engine performance with its high octane rating and its cool latent heat of vaporization and all those other fancy terms. Ethanol is a great transportation fuel. But finally, it is better for agriculture. Dating myself a little bit here, I was born in 1979, and the advent and subsequent exponential growth of the ethanol industry has been by far the most transformative and consequential development for corn farmers and agriculture as a whole in my lifetime. So now let's move on to ethanol's future. Now there's a lot of debate percolating about whether ethanol has a bright future or whether ethanol's best days as a meaningful part of our transportation fuel mix are over. And the answer to that question will depend on several things, including our response to the important challenges and opportunities facing us, particularly on the policy and market development front. So there are three important policies that we want to talk about today that are key to the future of ethanol and the future of agriculture. And those relate to the growth of E15, which is a blend of 15% ethanol in the marketplace, the renewable fuel standard and the low carbon fuel standard, and the Next Generation Fuels Act. And Kelly is going to get us started talking about E15.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. You know, E15 is, like Grant said, it's a 15% blend, and a lot of stations are labeling it as unleaded 88. And that's because the octane rating is 88 octane. So that gives you a little more energy or power with your fuel and with that extra octane. As a farmer, you know, our goal is to get to a national blend of E15. And if we can get there, that would increase the gallons of ethanol needed to 7 billion gallons per year, which would increase the corn grind for farmers by about 2.5 billion bushels a year. So, you know, we've been working hard on getting the infrastructure out there for unleaded 88 or E15. And in the next slide, it shows that currently we have infrastructure in 30 states, 22,555 locations across the Midwest, and growing on a daily basis. We've had some like HBIP programs from the federal government to help with infrastructure. Like I said earlier, the state of Iowa has a renewable fuels infrastructure program to help with this. And we continue to promote and supply retailers with some grants to help them with getting this infrastructure and to have it grow. You know, recently the court denied year-round E15, and that's one of our biggest challenges right now. In the past, it was because of reed vapor pressure. E15 had to be labeled for flex fuel vehicles only from the months of June, July, and August. And during the Trump administration, it was changed that it was given a 1 pound waiver or a waiver to allow E15 to be sold year round. And then just recently, the court decision reversed that. So we were very disappointed in that court's decision, and we're working very hard with legislators trying to get E15 year-round sales back. You a lot of retailers have put the infrastructure in, and I feel pretty strongly they're going to continue to sell it year round, and maybe not label it in the summer months because consumers are buying it. So that's one of the big pushes right now for the national corn growers and Iowa corn growers is to get the E15 year-round sales back on track.
Yep, and that's it's one of those things that it's all about politics and not about science. The reason E10 was given a 1 pound volatility waiver during the summer driving season was because it had the tailpipe emission benefits, and E15 actually has lower volatility than E10 and is more deserving of special volatility treatment. But unfortunately, a piece of legislation in 1990 did not contain 2 key words. It only said 10% and not 10% or more. And so we are fighting like mad to get this reversed so that we can sell this fuel year round. It is lower cost, it's higher octane, and it's just a great fuel choice for consumers and a huge growth opportunity for our industry for sure. So I want to talk about the renewable fuel standard. Now, this is another policy that's very important to the ethanol industry. It became law in 2005 and was expanded in 2007 to increase the level of renewable fuel utilized in our transportation fuel supply. And the policy has been a tremendous success, dramatically accelerating the use of biofuels like ethanol. In fact, recent research states that the RFS resulted in the cumulative avoidance of nearly 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions between 2008 and 2020. So while we view it as a great success, since 2013, the RFS has been under constant attack. In fact, it's been under constant attack since its inception, but particularly in 2013 until today, there's been constant attacks, and the EPA under 3 different administrations has struggled with the implementation of the program. So RFS supporters have been urging EPA to get the RFS back on track since 2013, and detractors have been trying to kill the program since 2013. So the fight for the RFS continues today. In fact, the Biden administration recently put out a rule which we commented to the EPA that it contained a little good, a little bad, and a little ugly. And we are hopeful that the Biden administration will stand up for biofuels and the RFS, as it is the most meaningful carbon reduction policy on the books today. So that remains a tremendous growth opportunity for us in the future, and we are hopeful that it will continue to be a meaningful policy going forward. Kelly.
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about low carbon fuel standards, and basically what that is. California has one, Washington has one, Oregon has one. Canada is another country that's going towards a low carbon fuel standard. And basically what it is that it gives you premiums or credits for lower carbon fuels. Like I said, at our plant in Sioux Center, we've been focusing on lowering our CI scores to help with the premiums going into California. And California actually is the fastest growing area for E85 sales. So that's pretty exciting for us. And we are working right now with California. They have not approved E15 yet. But we're doing some engine testings and stuff with CARB and the national corn growers and the ethanol organizations to get E15 approved in the state of California. We can move on to the next slide. The Next Generation's Fuels Act, and that's something I've been working on with the National Corn Growers now for over 4 years. And I'll give a shout out to Illinois because we were excited to have Representative Butos from Illinois introduce this bill here in the past few months. And the bill is HR 5089. If anybody wants to look it up, and it's got a lot, it's pretty complicated, but basically what it is it gives the auto industry an option to build engines that are high compression, low carbon engines that run on mid-level blends of ethanol. It's a futuristic bill to help make the next step past E15, but we feel pretty good. Currently, the Next Generation Fuels Act has 20 co-signers on the bill, and it is a bipartisan bill. So we're working to get that through legislation. One of the big things in today's world with EV vehicles, the auto industry is building them to meet CAFE standards for fuel mileage. And this, if we could get engines designed to run on mid-level blends, that would give them another option to meet CAFE standards for fuel economy. So now we're going to go on, and I'm excited to be able to talk a little bit about the clear flame engines. Grant, if you are, there you go. I said earlier that, and not with the whole group on, but I've been kind of connected, and Iowa Corn's been connected with BJ Johnson and Dr. Julie Bloomreiter for over 5 years. I think it was back in 2017. Iowa Corn received a letter from BJ Johnson just asking for a letter of support for their technology. Basically, what it was a science project at Stanford University where they were attending. And just to watch the progress of this diesel-styled engine that runs on E100, it's been pretty exciting. Just recently, they received a $17 million support, and John Deere was one of those supporters. And it's just the excitement about a large vehicle transportation being able to use 100% ethanol or E98 is really exciting. That a lot of the diesel engines, they need to run DEF in them today, and truckers are really frustrated with having to use that product. And E98 would basically eliminate emissions. And the exciting part about this, if clear flame engines would displace 20% of the diesel fuel engines, that'd be 15 billion gallons a year of ethanol. So absolutely, back in 2017, when they were looking for a letter of support, the farmers in the room just all had a big grin on our faces and thought this could be pretty awesome. So we were happy to give them that letter of support. So passing back to you, Graham.
Yes, and I'm not an engine expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it has been really exciting for me being involved in this project to a certain extent, to speak with engine experts who are so excited about this technology and the results that they've seen so far in the testing. And we're hopeful that there will be trucks on the road very soon demonstrating the promise of this technology going forward. They're seeing the same power, the same torque, the same efficiency out of these engines running on E98. And they're have the opportunity for a better dollars per mile driven metric as well, which is also very key for truckers and over-the-road transportation. And obviously, diesel engines are a very hard to electrify transportation sector application. And so, yeah, clear flame engines is a very exciting opportunity. And one of the ways in which BJ has shared it is that every 40,000 trucks, now granted, we're hoping for 4 trucks first, but if you get to 40,000 trucks, every 40,000 trucks would be about 1 billion gallons of diesel fuel demand that would be displaced by ethanol. So it's exciting. And again, this is not to replace diesel or renewable diesel or biodiesel. The diesel market in the United States is a 60 billion gallon market. So there's still plenty of room for all technologies, but this is one that we're definitely excited about the future. The next thing we want to talk about is sustainable aviation fuel. And you've probably read a lot of press releases about this. In fact, you may have seen recently that United Airlines flew a jet halfway across the country running on a sustainable aviation fuel. One of the engines ran 100% blend of sustainable aviation fuel that was made from sugar, water, corn, and garbage as the feedstocks. So this is an example of the type of feedstocks that can be used for sustainable aviation fuel. You see corn on there, and the pathway to get from corn to sustainable aviation fuel would be either from corn to corn sugar to sustainable aviation fuel, or corn to ethanol to sustainable aviation fuel, or corn to isobutanol to sustainable aviation fuel. So those are the pathways being considered. Right now, the closest pathway to commercialization is the lipids to sustainable aviation fuel opportunity, and that is your renewable fats such as vegetable oils, animal fats, used cooking oil, things of that nature. The distiller's corn oil from ethanol plants would be a part of that lipids family. And so the sustainable aviation fuel represents between 26 and 30 billion gallons of demand in the United States, over 100 billion gallons of demand worldwide. And this is really right now the only segment of the petroleum demand that is growing right now. And so there is an opportunity for growth there, but there are also lots of challenges. And those challenges will involve policy, conversion costs, straight up economics. And then we also, since, you know, aviation fuel more than transportation fuel is more of a worldwide fuel specification and marketplace. In lots of parts of the world, there is discrimination against agriculture-based products in life cycle analysis. So that's something that we have to fight against and make sure that science wins out. And we will certainly continue to do our best to take advantage of this market opportunity. This is not an immediate replacement for the light duty vehicle fleet or everyday cars and trucks. That is by no means a replacement, but it does represent a growth opportunity going forward, and we need to position ourselves well to capitalize on that. Another growth opportunity is exports. And carbon reduction obviously is not just a US priority. And if you look around the world, there is some extremely dirty fuel that's out there. Fuel that relies solely on octane boosters, fossil fuel-based octane sources, the benzenes, the toluenes, the xylenes, even the MTBE, which is banned in most states in the United States, and has a devastating effect on water quality if even trace amounts of it find its way into the soil through any leaks. But there is billions of gallons of MTBE used around the world, and ethanol could be there to replace that MTBE as a clean, affordable octane source around the world. So you can see from this chart the annual growth in US ethanol exports, and in partnership with the US Grains Council, we've seen steady growth in US ethanol exports, and we are hoping to sort of break through the tipping point, if you will, to really accelerate the growth in ethanol exports. 2020, you can see there was 1.33 billion gallons of exports. This year will also be over 1 billion gallons. Fuel demand reductions due to COVID have had an impact on our export opportunities. And where is U.S. ethanol going? You can see here our top 5 export customers. Canada has been an extremely reliable customer. India, and that is only in industrial uses for ethanol, but they have had some aggressive policies calling for higher blends of ethanol to lower the levels of pollution in that very fast growing nation. And their fuel demand is also growing at a huge rate. I believe they're expecting to increase their gasoline consumption by like 10 billion gallons over the next 5 years or so. So that's also a great opportunity for ethanol to be used. Right now, they do not allow us to export U.S. ethanol for automobiles, just for industrial uses, but even the industrial uses has been a great market. South Korea, China imported very large volumes of U.S. ethanol in 2020, 2021, and Europe. Brazil represents a huge opportunity. They produce a lot of ethanol on their own, but the nature of their production is that their plants can either produce ethanol or sugar from the sugar cane. And lately they've been producing more sugar than ethanol. So we're hopeful that we can get back into that market. There's some very unfair trade practices, trade barriers that have been erected in places like Brazil with an 18% tariff on all US ethanol imports right now. And the country of Mexico, our neighbor to the south, which had E10 approved for almost all of the country. And then a new president came in who was very close to the state-owned oil company in Mexico, and he cut off all of the growth in US ethanol exports. So we are sending trace amounts of US ethanol to Mexico. But what's interesting is in Houston, Texas, is one of the largest plants in the world that produces MTBE. And we are shipping lots of US produced MTBE from Houston to pollute the air and groundwater in Mexico. And that, folks, is a complete travesty. I really wish that story would be told a lot more. But we are hopeful that, that market in Mexico is the same size as the California gasoline market. So our very ambitious goal for exports over the next decade is 4 billion gallons of ethanol exports. And we think we can get there, but we're going to need some assistance on the trade policy front. Now let's get to the real fun topic, electric vehicles. Kelly, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to step in here. And I guess the first thing we want to say is we're not going to dismiss that EV vehicles are going to be part of our transportation system. We know they will be. We in the ethanol industry, we've seen what a challenge it's been just for infrastructure to grow our industry. And we feel the EV vehicles are going to have the same situation. They've been basically mandating EV vehicles in California for over 40 years now. And they're currently at 2% of their automotive purchases or uses in the state of California. So there's a lot of things that's going to have to happen before EV vehicles are going to be a big part of our transportation system. And I think this graph right here, that's grant we're showing right now, that shows by 2050, 80% of the vehicles are still going to be using liquid fuel, their internal combustion engines. So, the great thing about ethanol is as we continue to lower our carbon footprint and go to carbon negative, we will be cleaner than EV vehicles. So we're pretty excited about that message and continuing to share that we're here now. And you know, the futuristic thing is more leaning or excited. The excitement is about EV vehicles, but if everyone's truly concerned about carbon emissions and a solution to climate change, ethanol is here today, and it's going to be a great part of that solution.
Just building on what Kelly said, I mean, right now in the United States, there's over 260 million light duty vehicles on the road, and those are not just going to disappear overnight. So this is a chart by the Fuels Institute, which just puts a reality check on some of the aspirations with electric vehicles. And this is stipulating, and believe me, I think it's a big stretch that 60% of new vehicles sold in 2040 will be electric vehicles. However, if they were, as this chart illustrates, electric vehicles will still only represent 27% of the light duty vehicles on the road. So again, if we care about carbon reduction, we need to focus on internal combustion engines as a potential source of that carbon reduction. Because even in these rosiest of rosy scenarios, 73% of the vehicles on the road will still be using internal combustion engines and burning liquid fuels. And every 7 to 8 years, we use 1 trillion gallons of gasoline. That's just an undeniable fact. So why don't we focus on, I mean, if we're serious about carbon reduction, we need to focus on taking that next trillion gallons and making it even cleaner as we focus on other opportunities to reduce and lower carbon as well. This chart here was from a study that just came out by Deloitte that was published last week, as a matter of fact, that shows consumer preferences for vehicles. This shows, the question was what vehicle type that a consumer would prefer for their next vehicle purchase. And in the United States, there's varying answers here around the world, but in the United States, if you add up the gasoline, diesel, the hybrid electric, and even the plug-in hybrids, which do use some, I mean, even if you use the hybrid electrics in the electric category fully, 90% of the respondents plan on purchasing something other than an electric vehicle for their next vehicle. So consumers in the United States are not quite there yet when it comes to purchasing an electric vehicle, because they are an exciting technology, but they are not the iPhone either. They do represent a lifestyle change and real sacrifices that someone has to think about. Certainly there's advantages to lower fuel costs, but it's not available to everyone. And it does represent a lifestyle change when you have to think about where you can next charge your vehicle. And frankly, electric vehicles today are also recommending that you not charge your vehicle in your garage or park it next to a vehicle, you know, within 50 feet in some cases, because there have been issues with these batteries starting on fire. And yeah, I mean, not again to sound alarmist, all vehicles have issues, but there's a lot of challenges to overcome for the promise of electric vehicles, of taking over the whole vehicle fleet to come to pass.
So I know we're kind of running long on our time here, but I made some points earlier about how the ethanol industry is working towards lowering their CI scores and being carbon negative. But I'll just say that I know how our farming practices have improved and changed. So farmers are doing a lot of things to reduce their carbon footprint. And the ethanol industry is also doing the same thing. So I feel pretty confident that we will get to that carbon negative by 2030.
Nice. And the last slide here is just for us to reiterate that we do not view this as ethanol versus EVs. It's going to be ethanol and EVs. And with that being said, ethanol is the most immediate affordable carbon reduction solution available for our transportation sector today. And as Kelly reiterated, ethanol is on a path to carbon negativity. So the fact that the corn plant literally sucks carbon out of the atmosphere, that is something that no electric vehicle will ever be able to accomplish. So we have the ability to not just be carbon reducing or carbon neutral, but carbon negative, and that's very exciting. And so as policy going forward, we are just asking for a technology neutral, performance-based approach to low carbon policy that does not pick one solution at the expense of all others, but focuses on an end goal. That's carbon reduction and carbon removal, creating a technology neutral playing field, and may the best technology win. And we are confident that we will be able to compete very well in that type of a playing field. So with that, we will stop, and I will stop sharing my screen here, and we can entertain any questions.
Great. So folks, we're going to open it up for questions. The way we're going to handle this is please put your questions in the chat box. And then what I will do is I will moderate those and I will unmute some of you to ask those questions. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our first question here. I'm going to go ahead and ask one, and then we'll get to our first guest. You know, when you fill up, at least from a consumer perspective, I think individuals feel that there's a lower miles per gallon with some of the ethanol blends than the pure gasoline. Is that true? And do you have any comments on that?
I'll start with that, Kelly, and you can take it from where I leave off. But ethanol does have a lower energy density than gasoline. But remember, at the 10% or 15% level, or even up to a 30% level, what you are replacing in the gasoline is the octane sources. Those benzenes, toluenes, xylenes, ethylbenzenes, isooctanes, things like that. And so ethanol at those blends, and with an engine that is specifically tuned to run on those blends, which we're hoping to have with the Next Generation Fuels Act, you will see, even though it has lower energy density, you will get greater utilization of the BTUs that are in the fuel, and just the same or even better fuel efficiency and gas mileage. But today, with a E85 in a flex fuel vehicle, which is tuned to run on E10 and to tolerate E85, you are absolutely going to see a reduction in fuel economy. But hopefully the lower cost of that E85 will offset that. But with E10 or E15, the fuel economy in today's vehicles is indistinguishable, and you're getting a lower cost fuel that's cleaner burning and better for your engine. So Kelly, anything I missed?
You covered that really well, Grant. I will say, you know, they've known for years that E30 was a premium blend. And I basically run E30 in every vehicle I got, from my 71 Chevelle to my 2021 GMC pickup. And I've had no issues with any of them, and fuel economy has been good.
And just a reminder that 95+% of the vehicles on the road today are approved to run on E15. So if you see unleaded 88 at your fueling station, don't be scared by the fact that it's 5 to 10 cents per gallon lower cost. Try it, save some money, and I promise you, you won't notice the difference.
Great, thank you. So our next question comes from Phil Fair. Go ahead, Phil.
Oh, hi. Thanks, John. Yeah, let's see. First, I want to ask about the octane numbers. Are there higher than 88 available in automotive fuel at this point?
Yes. So the typical gasoline blend in most of the countries is 87 octane. That's your regular gasoline blended with 10% ethanol. If you blend an E15, that's going to get you 88 octane, but you could also make premium gasoline is 91 octane. We sell a lot of 93 octane E10 in here in the state of Iowa. E85 is over 100 octane. An E30 would be about what, Kelly? 95, 96 octane?
Yeah, it's in the mid 90s for octane levels.
So we are hopeful that we can have engines in vehicles that will be able to utilize those higher blends, take advantage of those higher octane properties, and get greater engine performance and better fuel efficiency.
Okay. All right. Well, then my last question is regarding where can I get ethanol fuel? I live in Illinois, not Iowa. And so that map of the US that you show with a lot of the brands and the penetration across 30 states, I didn't see brands like Shell or BP or Mobil. Why not?
So those brands have our major oil company brands, and not surprisingly, they have been the lagging indicators in adopting higher ethanol blends. Every Shell, Mobil, Phillips 66, whatever station, BP, they're all offering a 10% ethanol blend. And if you look closely on your dispensers, you'll notice that all the fuel contains 10% ethanol in Illinois. But there are retailers like Casey's General Stores. Thornton's used to be, is Thornton's still a thing in Chicago? Or maybe they got.
I remember seeing, I know my son went to Illinois. So on the way to Illinois, I used to see it in rural Illinois.
Yeah.
About close to Chicago.
There are some locations in Chicago, but I tell you what, Phil, we have got some connections where we'll be able to tell you where you can find any higher blends of ethanol in Chicago. Is that where you live?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right.
That'd be
Please,
great.
John will provide our contact information. I would love to get your email address, and we would be glad to share that information with you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for your questions, Phil. We're going to go ahead to Mr. Ken Cinco. He's got a question. Ken?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? I'm coming
Yes,
through.
we can. Yep.
Okay, I have two questions, actually. I'll start with maybe the more brief one. And that is, I can recall 10, 15 years ago, flex fuel was something that was obvious. If you bought a car, you had a badge on the back underneath the trunk that said it was flex fueled and E85 tolerant. I don't see that anymore. Does that mean that an automobile that I purchased today would not be tolerant of E85, or is that tolerance there and just not being publicized?
I'll speak to that, I guess. The frustrating part about today's world is the flex fuel. There's only 11 flex fuel vehicles made today. The flex fuel vehicles lost their CAFE credits a few years ago, and then back in the day when the auto industries were building them, they were getting $1,200 per vehicle, roughly, to add $100 chip that made the engines work or fire right for E85. The CAFE credits today are all going towards EV vehicles. They're receiving between $7,500 and $14,000 per vehicle to build EV vehicles. We're really trying to get the auto industry to go back to building more flex fuel vehicles, but it's been a challenge since they lost their CAFE credits.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that is a part of the Next Generation Fuels Act, is to restore, because there are very lucrative incentives out there through the EPA regulations that go to automakers building electric vehicles. In fact, for emissions benefits, for every vehicle they make, they get credit for making 2 vehicles, which is astonishing. We do not have a credit for flex fuel vehicles through regulation today that makes automakers makes it appealing for automakers to start building those engines again. And we think that's a huge lost opportunity, particularly when carbon reduction is such a focus.
Okay, thank you. I had a second question relating to the notion of negative carbon fuels as alcohols are, well, I just heard the term for the first time during the Clear Flame presentation. And I don't have a good background as to understand why a fuel that contains carbon, and I'm sure there's carbon dioxide out the tailpipe, is actually carbon negative. And you made some reference to the production plant sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Could you go into more detail on that, please?
Yeah, so when you think about the corn plant, the corn plant is composed of approximately 50% carbon. And where does that carbon comes from? It comes from the atmosphere. It's biogenic carbon. So the corn plant is literally a solar collector, and it sucks CO2 out of the atmosphere, for lack of a better term. So let's say we produce 200 bushel corn in Iowa. That means an acre of corn is capturing about 2.8 tons of carbon in the form of grain from the atmosphere each year. And 2.8 tons of carbon is equal to 11 tons of CO2 equivalent removed from the atmosphere. So what makes the corn plant amazing is it not only consumes renewable energy to make its products, it also removes carbon from the atmosphere at the same time. And I challenge anyone to name another industry which can claim that. Some industries certainly use renewable energy, and a very few remove CO2 from the atmosphere, but agriculture is the only industry that uses renewable energy and removes carbon from the atmosphere.
Yes, and a lot of those credits or rankings are a life cycle analysis, basically. So it gets pretty complicated. Grant made a perfect example of the corn plant, but the ethanol plants are working on a carbon capture and storage possibility, is where you capture the CO2 emissions out of the plant and liquefy it and pipe it underground in the right geological areas. There's a few in North Dakota. There's some in Illinois where they're pumping the CO2 or liquefied CO2 right down in the ground into porous rock where it's stored forever. And so those are all part of those carbon scores, and those are what's going to get us to that carbon negative score for biofuels.
And so the carbon from the atmosphere is deposited, taken out of the atmosphere by the corn plant, deposited in the kernel. It goes to the ethanol plant. It's processed. During the fermentation, the CO2 is then captured, liquefied, transported through a pipeline, and buried under the ground forever. So that carbon never gets back to the atmosphere. So it's pretty amazing opportunity. If carbon reduction and carbon removal is our goal, this is a great technology to do it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, Ken. We now have a guest from Brazil who would actually like to comment on the industry down there. Renata Ribeiro, go ahead.
So thanks, John. Yes, I work for Stellantis here, and the comment is that here in Brazil also, the majority of the oil companies just offer the E10, and also we do a lot of work to perform a perfect engine for flex fuel vehicles here, since the market it's better accepted by the consumers for flex fuel engines. But we get very frustrated since the consumers do not have the better experience with the cars. And also the SUVs just grown a lot here in Brazil under the marketplace. So the emissions also grown by last 2 years. So I would like to know the opinion from Grant and Kelly about the marketplace that they know from Brazil. What they think about this growth from SUVs here.
Yeah, so I mean, I will give Brazil a lot of credit because I mean, Brazil does have, you know, they do have vehicles that run on 100% hydrous ethanol, and they have 27% ethanol blends available as well during the country. And if you compare the air quality, and again, I'm sorry to hear about the increase in carbon emissions, but if you compare the air quality in Buenos Aires to Mexico City, your use of ethanol compared to Mexico City's lack of use of ethanol is an amazing juxtaposition. One has clear sky, I mean, you know, relatively clear skies, and the other has a blanket of smog almost all year round. And so I applaud Brazil for what they're doing. I now just wish that the country would remove its trade barriers to allowing US ethanol to come in.
Yes, for sure.
Because we do have Brazilian ethanol coming to California tariff-free. And if we want to send ethanol to Brazil, we have to pay an 18% tariff. So that's, we would prefer that trade situation be put on more equal footing.
Yes, I also hope by during this year, we have a high hope for these benefits getting resolved by government.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next question is going to go to Philip Bolton. Philip, are you on? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question about promotion and perhaps lobbying to the off-road OEMs, specifically those who produce their own engines. Why wouldn't they want to offer engines, especially for smaller machines, that would be compatible with using ethanol? Seems like an easy sell to their customers who are producing the corn to make the ethanol.
I do think there are some of those being put together right now. I think Clear Flame engines might even be working on some small diesel or diesel styled engines that run on E100 or E98. So, you know, all those challenges or all those prospects are being looked into, and time will tell. Everything takes some time, but I do know there is some work being done on smaller engines to run on ethanol blends.
Great. Yeah, and you may want to check out that Clear Flame presentation on our YouTube channel.
It seems a bit of an area of lack of innovation because we're all looking towards the automotive industry to be compatible with ethanol. But, you know, companies like John Deere or CNH or Class or any of them have not really made an effort in this field. I know CNH just recently launched a methane tractor. And, you know, I mean, why couldn't you have at least the small horsepower tractors running on gasoline and ethanol? Yeah. I think it's an area to look into and do some more lobbying.
Grant, do you want to talk about Clear Flame engines and John Deere there?
Yeah, so Clear Flame is working with John Deere to utilize one of its engine platforms for to be able to run it on 100% ethanol. And so they have a lot of interest in this technology, and we're excited to see where it goes. ClearFlame is looking at not only over-the-road trucks and also agriculture equipment, tractors, harvesters, things of that nature, but also generators. There's a lot of large generators that utilize similar engines to diesel trucks. And so there's a huge opportunity on just the genset sector to reduce emissions by burning 100% ethanol rather than diesel fuel.
Great. Yeah, I'll just make one comment before we move to the next question on this subject. This is exactly one of the reasons we wanted to have the folks from the Iowa Corn Promotion Board on, because the ClearFlame presentation was so well received and was very eye-opening to many of our section members, because most of us don't work in the passenger car industry in this particular Chicago section. We work on tractors and trucks and everything that you were just talking about. So really will be interested, Philip, to your point, to see if there is more lobbying in that area to help move some of this stuff forward. ClearFlame's clearly doing a great job on the R&D, but there's a lot more work that could be done. The next question will go to Dan Ezenekwe. Dan? Dan might be on mute, so I'll go ahead and ask Dan's question for him. Oh, Dan,
sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So it's very simple. So we talked about the Next Generation Fuels Act becoming law. Is that law already, or are you guys working it? What are the challenges? I think that's a very important piece of legislation that needs to be that needs to come through.
Yep, I will speak for that, sitting as vice chair of the National Corn Growers Ethanol Committee. The Next Generation Fuels Act is our key project right now to get that passed through the House and onto the Senate. Currently, we have 20 co-signers. We would love a lot more co-signers to come on board. We're constantly working with other legislators to get them to come on board as co-signers, but we're also looking for stakeholders that would put their name on support for the Next Generation Fuels Act. Just to show the legislators that it's a lot more important to a lot of industries to get this Next Generation Fuels Act passed. So the more support we can get from around the country, the better our odds are. And I'll be honest with you, the ethanol industry has never been an easy task in getting any legislation passed. When it comes to rural America or corn growing areas, we only have like 41 or something like that out of 430 some congressional leaders that are from an ag district. And so, we need to get legislators from outside the ag industry to co-sign onto this Next Generation Fuels Act, and that would give it a great leap forward.
I'm just going to add to that, Kelly, briefly, that this legislation was developed with cooperation of the automobile industry. And the language was run by them to say, would this work for you? They described it to us like their challenge of meeting more aggressive fuel economy standards. They used the analogy of being locked in a room. And in order to get out and to meet the fuel economy standards, right now there's only one door out of that locked room, and that's electrification. They are looking for another door out, and we would provide that to help them meet more aggressive fuel economy standards with engines that put more ethanol in the tank and are cleaner burning and would help them to meet those more aggressive fuel economy standards. So, and greenhouse gas emission reduction. So it's definitely a cooperative effort. And as Kelly said, we need more stakeholders to move it forward. It's in the early stages right now, but we're hopeful that we can pick up momentum in the year ahead.
Great. So we're going to go to our final question of the night. That's going to go to Steve Tyrell. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. First of all, a very excellent presentation. It's good to see that ethanol is really out there. My question is, does anyone really know the cradle to grave footprint of an EV vehicle versus a conventional gasoline? I mean, I know there's 0 emissions out the tailpipe when the EV vehicle is driving down the road, but to build it and to destroy it at the end there's carbon emissions there. Does anybody know that number, or is it similar comparisons, or that's my question?
Yeah, I'll make the quick comment and let Grant finish up. But that's the part that's not quite right. They have not done a life cycle analysis on EV vehicles, and if they did, it would clearly show that with 65% of our electricity produced in the U.S. coming from coal, and
Exactly.
plus all the mining for the rare materials to make batteries. We're not on an equal playing field here with the EV vehicles, that's for sure. So he's more on the technical side, but I definitely know it hasn't been an even apple for an apple when it comes to life cycle analysis between ethanol and EV vehicles.
Well, the average consumer has no clue of that.
Right. And the EPA, the greenhouse gas emission rule that just came out, it assumes no downstream emissions for electric vehicles. So they give them credit for 0 emissions out of the tailpipe and just ignore all the stuff before. But there was a hearing at the U.S. House Agriculture Committee this week. And one of the pieces of testimony that was presented showed a chart from the International Energy Agency. And again, I'm happy to share this testimony with the group in a follow-up email to John. But it showed a chart that showed that mid-sized battery electric vehicles are found to reduce lifetime greenhouse gas emissions by about 50% on average compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle operating on petroleum. And the magnitude of the greenhouse gas reduction achieved can vary from just 7% to 77%, depending on the source of the electricity used to charge the vehicle's battery and the origin of the minerals used in the manufacturing of the battery. So again, that is not a 0 emission vehicle, according to that scorekeeper. And again, our analysis recently that came out from Harvard University that Kelly referenced early in the presentation showed ethanol on average being a 46% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to gasoline. So we're competing well right now, but when certain scorekeepers don't count any of the only look at the tailpipe and nothing else, that makes it a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to just give one last parting comment from Franklin Bowes, because I think it helps answer Phil Fair's question about where he could find these ethanol blends in the Chicago area. And Franklin says that the Gas Buddy app actually has a filter that you could use to filter by fuel type, Phil. So you may want to try the Gas Buddy app. That might help you out in locating the blend that you're looking for here in our Chicago area. That's all of our questions. We thank everybody for coming on tonight. It was a really exciting presentation, a great follow-up to our presentation from ClearFlame. And I think this is a topic that's going to have a lot of interesting discussion. And for those of us who are engineers, a lot of interesting developments to come ahead. So thank you very much, Grant. Thank you very much, Kelly. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah.
This recording will be,
Thank you.
we will make this available. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone,
Thank everybody.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you.
and Happy New Year.
Yeah.
You
Happy
too.
New Year.